If you have an idea, if you have something that you want to do, sit down and do it. I mean, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of stress. But the thing is, if it's, kind of like one of those little brain worms and it keeps poking at you, then it really needs to come out. So don't just sit on it and say, oh, I'll do it later. Sit down, take your time, and get it down so everybody can share whatever it is that's floating around in your head.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are and wherever you're watching from. My name is Matt Pierce, and today we're going to be having an awesome conversation. We're going to be talking with a creator who has a lot of interesting experiences that I'll let him share a little bit about, but we are going to be talking about story, we're going to be talking about writing, we're going to be talking about how we can use video to communicate ideas, and it's going to be fantastic. So I want to jump right in here with our guest today, Mike Fasolo. So welcome, Mike, to the Visual Lounge. Glad that you're here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So Mike, you've actually got a pretty distinguished career. What would you tell us about it? Like that you got dogs and you like writing. Is that the gist of it?
That's pretty much covers the whole thing. Yeah. My biggest credit is Robot Chicken. I worked on Robot Chicken for close to 20 years, doing all the writing. Sitting in the room, making sure everything is as it should be for the show, and warping children's minds as they watch the show.
So for those who don't know, and it's I know there's people who don't know, but give us a high level summary. What is Robot Chicken?
Robot Chicken, it's a stop motion animated show, basically spoofing pop culture. We touch on everything and we make fun of everything, and nothing is off limits. So we just go crazy and we pull something out of the headlines and just run with it.
Yeah, in the lead up for this, I did watch a bunch of episodes. I was at work and thinking I should probably stop because I'm going to spend all day catching up on episodes. And so it's really funny, really engaging stuff. And what a cool thing to see. I want to talk to you a little bit about that because I imagine, I'm not doing a lot of writing for TV shows. I'm not, telling stories after story after story after story. But as a writer, as someone who's creating that, what do you think's been the biggest kind of lesson that you've learned from working on a project, not only that has had longevity, but also has, I think it has been just so public because as soon as you're on a television network or you're on YouTube or you're wherever, it is very public work and people have opinions, we'll say.
Yes, people have a lot of opinions. The biggest thing is it's really just about storytelling. What it comes down to is you want to get the audience engaged, and especially for us, you want to make them laugh. And you want them to, as soon as the one episode is over, you want them to start clicking on the next just to see what's going to happen, what's going to come up, what other crazy ideas did these, bunch of writers think we'd like. So yeah, it's really just about story.
So in your experience, because you're also, you've written, you're a novelist. I know you guys have a live stream that you're working on every week about talking about comic books and creating comic books. And there's, again, kind of that storytelling aspect. Are there things in your bag of tricks that like you found have been super helpful over the years to kind of pull out as a writer to say like, hey, here are some things that I use to help stories become either move them along or make them more meaningful or help people to connect to them?
Well, I think the biggest thing, especially learning from sitting in the Robot Chicken writer's room, is you have to get in as quickly as possible. Dragging something out, I have to give all this background or I have to tell about all this exposition. No one wants to sit through that. They want to get into the action. They want something to happen, and then they want to get out and start the next thing. So it's like get in as fast as you can, find a hook that's going to draw them in, and then go from there. Tell the story quickly, and then get out. Move on to the next thing.
So let me ask you, because I think there's a tendency in the people I talk to, and even myself, I find myself is like, well, but they don't understand the character, or they don't understand the like you said, the exposition. They don't the lead up. So, and I don't try not to make this a yes/no question. Is it like, do you just sacrifice some of that, or are there things that you do to kind of maybe weave that back in, or just say like, hey, they're going to pick up along the way. We're going to trust the audience to get it.
Yeah, a lot of it is you have to understand that the audience is, just as smart as you are. So they are going to pick up on pretty much what you're trying to talk about. So I don't think you have to spend a lot of time explaining like the premise. You don't need background. You don't need stuff like that. You jump in, you give a little bit of, input for the characters and the story, and then you can just go. And the audience will get it. They will pick up on it. And then, it stops you from having to spend 25 minutes explaining things. Like even in the movies or TV shows today where they sit down with their friend or whoever, and they have a 25-minute conversation about the entire background of what's happening. They don't need that. You can show it in little flashes. You can show it in little clips of, pieces of paper, whatever is that the show is about. Something that clues them in, but it doesn't have to be, a sledgehammer to the head that this is exactly what it's about. Get in and, just start, just go. They will pick up on it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate they said that, the audience is as smart as you. I like to think my audience is probably smarter than me most of the time. Yeah. And they're like, hey, why are you being so obtuse about this, Matt? So with your work, with thinking about comic books, there's a lot of sequencing that kind of happens in comic books, and television, I'm assuming it's a lot the same. It's just different mediums and kind of delivery mechanisms. There are also gaps there. And again, it sounds like you're trusting that the audience will get it, but it does sound like you have mechanisms to pull back information. But how do you know if you've done too much or too little? Like, what was the metrics you're kind of looking at when, like, let's say you did a show or you're in a comic book? How do you know if you just didn't quite nail it? Any advice?
It is tough. I mean, comics are a different story because it's not obviously a visual. I mean, it is a visual medium, but it's not like a flowing thing. So every panel sort of has to tell their own story. So they each have a job, and that is meant to move the story along. And in the head of the readers, they're putting it all together. So you don't want to, linger on anything too long, unless it's absolutely necessary for the story, or else people do get bored. It's like watching, a 20-minute conversation between people. You're like, I'm done. I'll fast forward through this. You want to get in there and tell them exactly what needs to be said, and then move on. And it's kind of, I do some video editing, so it's kind of that same way. You don't want to linger on a shot too long, because then people are like, okay, I get it. And you also don't want to just pop it on the screen for 2 seconds, because then they'll be like, I didn't see what that was. It comes with practice, a lot of it, that you just have to get in there and see, especially what works for you, and think of how the audience is going to view it.
Yeah, can we talk about audience for a second? Because I'm assuming in each of the mediums that you've worked in, audiences are always different, right? And like the audience watching, let's say, Robot Chicken, probably certain demographics. You probably had access to some of that information or some understanding. When you're doing treatments on whether it's a comic book or whether it's a TV show or novel, what are the key things that you're considering in terms of, hey, I've got an audience and I need to connect with them? Are there elements that you typically look at, or is it always different because each of those mediums are different?
It's always different, but when we were in the Robot Chicken writers room, it was all about what you knew. Like a big group of us were Gen X. So we grew up with He-Man and Transformers and Smurfs and all that. So that's what we tapped into. We were writing for us, but we also had other writers who were from later on, much younger than us, 20 years younger than us, and they would write what they knew. So especially for something like that, it's it is write what you know, because that's what you're most tapped into, and that's what you know the best.
Did you ever find yourself in situations where like something scenario came up and they're like, Mike, you need to write this because you're the one that's got the time, and you're like, but that's not my thing, that's not my joke, that's not my thing, I don't know much about that. And how do you go about doing that when maybe you're not the expert on He-Man, but you're asked to write the segment with it?
You could either do a little bit of research, which we would sit down and, I haven't seen, Smurfs in 30 years, so I'll watch a few episodes and see if I can pick up on anything. But then other times you just go in blind and you're like, I'll just do what I can. And you find just one aspect of it and you run with it. And you try to make it as funny and as stupid and as ridiculous as you can, because that's what people are going to enjoy the most. They're not going to care that you got, Papa Smurf's pants color right. They're going to care that Papa Smurf is doing something out of his mind and making you laugh.
Well, as someone who recently learned that the Smurfs are very big in Belgium, they do care about the color of the pants.
Didn't they start off in Belgium? I think they started in France. Somewhere
yeah, one of those, I think. Yeah, well, I love that, right? Because I think oftentimes we're tasked with opportunities to create content that we're not, especially in the corporate world. The audience who's probably listening to this they're asked to make content about stuff that they're like, I don't know anything about. I worked at a pharmaceutical for a while about, health and safety of, lockout, tagout. Like, I didn't know anything. And so I think I like what you're saying is sometimes just lean in, and sometimes you do your research and do what you can. And speaking about creating content, it does feel like that a lot of people are out there, they have ideas, right? And I think what I love about what you're doing with Comic Book School, you and Buddy Scalera, and I know others are in on that project, but you had this idea and you just ran with it. How do you help people who are like, it seems like the things you've done, it's like takes a lot of just ideas, but beyond the ideas are great, but there's a million of them, but then you have to make something. What advice would you give to people who are like, I've got ideas and I think they're good ideas, they can't get past that ideation phase?
That's always the hard part, because everybody does have ideas. You can be, in the shower and be like, oh my God, whatever it is, that's a great idea. I heard a quote once. I don't remember where it's from, but it was something like, the idea is the spark, but the story is what happens after the fire starts. So if you have an idea, you need to just kind of delve into it and find the core of the idea. Like if it's about a character, whoever it is, you have to find who that character is, what they want, put an obstacle in front of them, and then make the outcome to whatever their problem is matter. So it's not just like, oh, I have an idea about a grilled cheese sandwich walking down the street. Who's the grilled cheese sandwich? Where's he going? What's he want to do? And kind of put a little of yourself into that grilled cheese sandwich and make him come alive for everybody who's watching. So it's the starting is always the hard part. That's what I think everybody does, because that blank screen in front of you is tough. You just gotta, and even if it is just writing the idea down, and then take some time, think about it, and see where you want it to go. But yeah, getting it down is the big part.
Yeah, it feels like I like the analogy of the spark, right? When you think about building a fire, you've got the spark, but you can't just put all the wood on it, right? It's add the kindling, add the stuff to catch. So if you were to give advice to someone who they come to you and they say, Mike, I see what you're doing. You are such a creative guy. You've worked on these cool projects. You've created all these things. I am not a creative person. It's not your job to coach them and give them their life advice, but if you had to give them a little bit of advice and help them, maybe what would you want them to know?
Well, I mean, does this person want to write? Do they want to, do artwork? Do they just want to be there to do the editing? It all kind of depends on what they're looking to do. For writing, it is just about sitting down and writing. You gotta sit down, you gotta start, and you gotta keep going. Your first draft is always going to be terrible. So, that's just something that you have to expect. If you want to be an artist, I'm terrible at art, but I've dabbled. I've taken those online courses or seeing what I can draw, and I'm absolutely terrible at it. But when I'm like, oh, I need to draw something, I got to map this out in storyboards. You sit down and you do it, and you just got to keep pushing forward. That's really the key. You can't go, I'm no good at this. I have the idea, but I don't feel like doing it. Then you really don't want to do it at all. That's really the thing. Just got to sit down, do it, and keep going no matter what.
Yeah, I don't know the percentages, but it sounds like what you're saying is that there's some small amount that is creativity and some larger amount that is effort.
Yes, effort is key. That's the thing. Because, you know, after sitting around writing all day, and I come home and I want to write my own stuff, I'm like, I do not feel like sitting down and doing this again, having to sit and think and write all day. But if you're like, if I want to get this book out or I want to get this TV show developed, you have to do it. So, sit down, take a few breaks, and get it done though.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about your comic book school project, because I do think it's pretty cool. I know you and, as I mentioned, Buddy Scalera are doing that. Tell us a little bit of the concept and what is it that you guys are talking about on a weekly basis?
Well, the log line of the show is the craft and business of making comics. So we sit down and we talk to writers and artists and illustrators and colorists and anyone who is involved in the whole comic field. Because we want people out there to, if they have an idea, to start doing it. And that's, again, as I was just saying, it's hard to get started. And this, I think, is something that we talk about because you can see people, even who are, famous in the industry, that they had to start somewhere. So it's not like, oh, they just had an idea and they sent it into Marvel and DC and now they're the biggest thing ever. You had to keep working on it. So yeah, that's what comic book school is all about. It's just getting the information from others out there, showing them how it's done, showing them what they can do, and passing it on to the audience.
So let's talk about video for a second in that context. And so you guys are doing it's a weekly live stream, and then that goes to YouTube, I believe, and then
Yep.
from there you're doing like other cuts and edits. And tell us a little bit about that process. What does it look like? Because it is interesting to take, and as a kind of fellow podcast live stream I've done. What's that process look like, going from that kind of that core piece of media to kind of the other pieces that you're creating? What are you doing?
Yeah, the live stream goes out directly on YouTube, and we leave that one up with all the mistakes and everything that happened on a live show. And yeah, then I take it into Camtasia, one of the other editing programs, sometimes right off of YouTube, and you just have to cut it up. And this is also where it comes in with telling a story. You have to take the pieces that you can see that are going to be good and that will hook people in, and you just got to sit down and watch the whole thing and start cutting it up into pieces that you think the audience is going to find interesting. Like we've been doing a lot lately with sketching. We've had a couple artists on there, Pat Quinn, Jay Martin, both comic writers and artists. And just watching them draw, because they'll sketch right live on the show, and it's fantastic. So we cut them up into little tiny vertical videos, and they've been doing really well for us. And it's fun. I think people love watching, especially something like that, come to life. It's a lot different when you're writing, but when you're sketching, you can actually see the drawing expand, and then they start inking and getting it all ready. It's so much fun to find the story in even a 30-second to a minute clip. It's interesting.
Yeah, I imagine, and it creates that unique challenge of like, how do you pull that out? And it goes back to kind of what we were talking about, I think, at the beginning of like, you could show the whole process, right? There's ways to do that in a shortened fashion, which is also interesting if you've ever watched like speed painting and stuff like that. But it's like, what don't you need to show or say or have because live experiences like this conversation is very different than like what would fit in a 30-second,
Yeah.
60-second kind of medium. So I do think that's super interesting. What from your perspective, as you know, I'm thinking about other people who could use this kind of technique to help them, you know, take these bigger pieces, turn it into smaller pieces. Is there any advice you'd give to people to help them to find those 30-second stories or 60-second stories in bigger media? Because it is, I'll admit, it can be really challenging to take, you know, from something that already exists. It's one thing if you're creating it to be short, but when you've got, I'm assuming 30 minutes, an hour, and you're
Yeah.
saying pull this little thing, what is it that helps you find the kind of thread to pull that story together?
You just have to find, especially when I'm doing it, I just find what's most engaging for me. It's kind of like I start with a question of what do I think is interesting after watching the whole thing? What did I pull out of this? And then I take that and I start, that's where I started. And you just have to make sure that as you're going through it, you know where to cut. So it's not a cliffhanger, but enough to make people want to see what's coming next. In comics, it's the same thing. When you end on a page, you want it to be a cliffhanger, so they want to flip the page over to see what's going to happen. So it is sometimes interesting to go through these things and go, where can I find a great cut in this that'll make someone go, oh, I'm going to keep watching for the next 5-10 minutes. So it's fun to sit down and try and figure that all out.
Yeah. I got to imagine also, the challenge of just the time, especially if you have a longer piece, you got to go through it, you got to watch it, you got to consider. And
Yeah.
obviously, hopefully some tools help make that a little bit easier, but there's still just the work in there. So, well, Mike, this has been an awesome conversation. I do have a couple what I'm going to call, I typically have done in the past speed round. I've kind of gotten rid of the speed round questions, but I have a couple questions I want to ask that fit more in this quick, fast question type category. And I want to ask if you're game. So if you're game, here we go. Number one, you have been in a writer's room. You know what that's like. Is there any writer's room, if you could have been part of it, that you would have jumped at the chance?
Supernatural. If I could have been on that show in the writer's room, that would have been absolutely fantastic.
So, Mike, why would you want that show to be in that writer's room? What about it would be attractive?
That genre, that type of show, that's kind of obviously supernatural kind of stuff. With even if it is the monster of the week, I love that stuff. That gets me so excited, and the way they built that show with the two characters, Sam and Dean, loved it. They were great to follow. They were so much fun, and it's one of those shows where like these guys feel like my brothers. I could hang out with them. So yeah, that's one of the shows I definitely would have loved to have been on.
That's awesome. Okay, so second question, speedrun question number 2. If you had to pick a comic book hero to be, who are you going to be? Not which one do you love to read? We might ask that too, but like which comic book hero would you want to be?
Uh, Probably Spider-Man. I mean, because he's the most fun. He doesn't seem that he's taken everything so seriously, at least especially in the early issues of when he first started. And you get to swing around the city. I can't say that I'd be really excited about wearing all the spandex, but being able to swing around the city and just you know doing everything, clinging to walls, getting away, running around, fighting the heroes, wrapping them up, or fighting the villains. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Spider-Man's a great answer. Personally, you're right. He's fun. He's lovable. He's got some cool stuff he gets to do. The stakes aren't always, I mean, there's some serious stakes, but not always super high stakes, right?
He deals
Like,
with like jewelry robbers and bank robbers and things like that. Every now and then you get somebody like the Rhino who just goes and wrecks things, but generally he's dealing with low level crime kind of guys.
yeah. So third and last speedrun question for you is there anything coming up that you're excited about to work on? It doesn't have to be like a job or anything like that, but just something you're working on that you're like, just got you pumped right now.
Working on another novel with a friend of mine. We're typing away, doing what we can, trying to get things pushed out as fast as possible. But it's a long process, so we just keep plugging away.
Yeah, writing books is not for the faint of heart. It is.
It's better to do it the way we do it with a partner, because the way we did it with the first one, it's just I would write 500 words and send it to him, and then he would write 500 words in return and send it back to me. So you don't have to think a whole lot, because at least the way we wrote the first one, there was no planning, there was no plotting, there was no nothing. It's just like sit down, write some words, send it off, and then we see what happens from there. So we're going to try that again and see if we can hit it like we did the first one.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Mike, this has been just a fantastic opportunity to talk. Thank you so much for joining me in the Visual Lounge. If people want to learn more about your novel, they want to connect with Comic Book School or anything that you're doing, how should they connect with you?
Well, comicbookschool.com. That's one way. I have my own web page, mikefasolo.com. I'm on Instagram as Mike Fasolo 1987. That was my favorite year, by the way. Twitter, I think Twitter I'm Fasolo, but the O's are zeros. Blue Sky, Mike Fasolo over there. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, if everybody wants to pick up the book, the first book is on Amazon. It's called Sky Master, Mike Fasolo. My co-writer is Pat David. You can look that up and be great. Yeah, take a look at it. It's kind of fun.
That's awesome. Awesome. We'll definitely check that out. We'll put all the links down in the description and stuff so people can easily find you. And Mike, as we wrap up, we like to end the show always in the same way and asking our guests, what is your final take?
My final take is, if you have an idea, if you have something that you want to do, sit down and do it. I mean, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of stress. But the thing is, if it's, kind of like one of those little brain worms and it keeps poking at you, then it really needs to come out. So don't just sit on it and say, oh, I'll do it later. Sit down, take your time, and get it down so everybody can share whatever it is that's floating around in your head.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that advice. Well, Mike, thanks again for joining me in the Visual Lounge.
All right. Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, everybody, you heard it. Like, what a great insight into writing, creativity, and making things happen inside of your organization. Now, you might feel like, oh, this is a distant connection, but there's the great thing there's that connection to the everyday work, even though we might not get the chance to use superheroes in our stories or monsters or anything like that, or we're not trying to make fun of every single pop culture reference there is. But you can see how you can make these connections to the things that you do, and how you can pull on creativity and how you can pull on that work to create things that are going to be meaningful for your audience, that are going to connect with them and help them to discover, explore, or learn whatever it is you're trying to get them to learn. And as we talked about with Mike a little bit already, that some of it's inspiration, a lot of it's effort, and what we hope you take, let's have you take a little bit of time every day to expand your effort to level up every single day. Thanks, everybody.